This one's for the OGs, Oblivion gamers. You're watching Pixels to Pigments, a show about video games and art. I'm a professional artist, and I'm a video game hobbyist, and I like to talk about games and make art based on them. If a game is good enough for me to play to the end credits, then I do a little piece of art based on it, and you get to see that process. I'll talk about materials and techniques along the way, and talk a little bit about what I liked and didn't like about the game. If you find it interesting at all, please like, subscribe, and tell me about what kind of games you might want to see in the future. I'm always open to suggestions, and if you want to leave a comment about your favorite game or something awesome that you played in the past year or two, I'd love to hear about it. Today I'm talking about the game Starfield. Now, Starfield was released in September of 2023, about 15 months before I played it. A lot has changed in that game since it released, and I think if you heard anything negative about that game, but you like open world RPGs, you should give this one a shot now. I think it's worth your time. If you're like me, then you spent your teenage years playing Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion. A lot of it. And that game is hilarious. It's hilarious in ways the developer probably never intended it to be, which adds to the charm, I think. It's why it lives in my brain rent-free. But there was one aspect that, in particular, the developer intended it to be hilarious, and that's the adoring fan. The adoring fan is a sweet little elf that follows you around after you complete the arena quest, and he just gives you little compliments here and there all the time. He's pretty annoying, but in a way that I found to be very humorous.
Oh, I can definitely do that. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to be 11 times infinity. Just you wait and see.
We as a culture are blessed to have the adoring fan return. He's returned twice now. One in the Oblivion remake that was just released, but before that, in Starfield. He was brought back as a perk, and he can be part of your crew, which is an amazing thing, and it brings me to my first point about why I liked Starfield enough to finish it. Starfield gives you a lot of freedom in terms of how you travel around the world, and the worlds, I should say, the galaxy. You are given a ship that can do faster than light travel. You can fast travel from almost anywhere to any other planet you've already been to. I mean, you don't even have to walk to your ship. You can just say, hey, I'm standing in a city and I want to go to another planet. And then within, I don't know, a minute or so, going through the menu and loading and stuff like that, you're there. It's pretty frictionless. One of the great things about playing games well after they're released is you get to play the best version of that game. The developers patched the games many, many times in the 15 months between release and when I played it. One aspect of that was the ground vehicles. I was able to go download an official mod to have a new ground vehicle, download an additional mod to give it more speed and boost, and essentially I could fly around any planet I wanted to, manually getting around to each destination, picking up my gravity powers, and carrying about my business quicker. I thought that the environments in the game were actually very well designed as well. I liked the look of them, I liked the variety. I thought that it was interesting to see these landscapes, and I know there was a lot of procedural generation going on, but within the cities and the colonies that were scattered here and there, I thought those were cool. And I thought that they were interesting to look at. And if a game ever is not interesting for me, I don't usually keep playing. You know, I mean, what's the point? So it kept my interest based on sort of the artistic design of it all. Another cool thing about downloading mods, one, it's really easy to do with the Bethesda.net launcher. You just literally click on mods and then go find the ones you want. One of those mods, in addition to the traversal and vehicle mods, was making my character viable to be a hand-to-hand combat style character. The game is so focused on guns and leveling up guns that they don't really give you a lot of options to be melee or hand-to-hand. So I filled those gaps with mods. I enjoyed the game more playing a melee character than always having to pick up ammo or, you know, take care of my guns and all that stuff. I like to play Bethesda games with melee. And so luckily there were mods out there that allowed me to do that. Another great thing about the game, I thought that the reason you're not on Earth was explained in a really cool way. Not to give any spoilers, but it's the classic tale of technological or scientific progress being unchecked and leading to greater consequences that no one ever expected. Now for the downsides. My main gripe with the game was the ship combat. I didn't find it fun at all. It would be okay if I could just kind of avoid enemies and try to get around them and not deal with it much. But there were certain parts in the game where you were kind of forced to do the ship combat. And what it boils down to is, do you have more shields and better weapons than your enemy? You can't outmaneuver them. They just fire at you and you're in a giant slow ship that can't really get around very well. You can't do strafing or barrel rolls or anything to avoid all these weapons that your enemies are firing at you. You just have to kind of take it and dish it out. It's a brute force sort of gameplay as far as I could tell. I mean, maybe somebody out there has figured out a way to be like a fighter jet in space in this game, but it wasn't there for me, and it didn't click at least. My other downsides with the game are technical aspects that may have to do with my system or graphics card or just the amount of mods that I started using. So, first of all, when I was traveling around on the planets, there was quite a lot of stuttering. It just wasn't smooth to get from one location to another. Now, I praise the ability to fly around the planets, but I think the downside is you do have to deal with the stutter. So I would gladly take stutter over walking around everywhere any day. My other thing that I didn't like was the inclusion of DLSS. Now, in some games, DLSS, if you don't know, it's basically a way for modern NVIDIA graphics cards to fake anti-aliasing or smooth out the image so you don't see raw, jagged pixels. For me, it kept getting turned on. Now, that's not necessarily a problem in some games, but in this game, there's a lot of thin little lines in the UI elements that DLSS just doesn't know what to do with. Those little lines, if you turn the camera, will show little artifacts on either sides of the line, and I just thought it was terrible. So I turned it off. Next time I boot the game up, DLSS is on again. And this could do with the NVIDIA app or the drivers or something constantly changing it back to that. But it was annoying, and I did not like it. I wish I could just remove it entirely from the game. So that's, in a nutshell, what I liked and didn't like about Starfield. But I liked more than I didn't like, and I played it until the credits rolled. As are the rules of this video series, I must now create the artwork, and I want you to join me in that process. So now let's do like what we did in Oblivion in that one side quest and jump into the painting. Okay, I'm starting out here with a water spritzer, a little spray bottle, and I'm covering the page with water so that I have a wet surface to easily blend my colors with. Using a bristly brush, I'm kind of spreading the water across and making it nice and even. And then I take some, I think it's a burnt sienna, let the pigments kind of flow. And I'm using more than I think I need because the water, again, like I said, will take it around. It'll push it around. I keep flipping the page and kind of letting gravity take the pigments where I want them to go. And then I kind of bring that big bristly brush back and give it some more texture and kind of add some randomness. And I'll reuse certain tools like the sprayer and stuff like that throughout the process. I'm basically just letting water do its thing and kind of push pigments around in interesting ways. At a certain point, I then block in where I want the vehicle to be. Nothing is defined at all. I'm just adding colors, and then I start going in with some shadow, and this blue, I think it's a cerulean blue, is kind of giving me my nice cool shadows. And so I add those in. Again, it's wet on wet, so everything's kind of blurring. Nothing's defined yet, but it kind of looks cool. And I just kind of push the colors around. We get into the point where I'm adding ground detail. Again, very, very wet paint. And it's drying lighter than it looks when you first put it down, because you know that's going to happen with watercolor or gouache. So when it kind of soaks into the paper, it gets a little bit lighter. And also when it dries, sometimes that glossiness of wet paint is, to the eye, making the pigments look lighter. So it does look lighter by the time everything's all dried up. At this point, I have to decide where my character is going to be and what kind of proportions I'm looking at. So you'll see I've pulled out a transparency sheet and I'm clipping it onto here. And what that's going to allow me to do is use a dry erase marker to draw the figure, not messing up the painting underneath. So it's basically a Photoshop layer in reality where I'm allowed to kind of figure out the proportions and figure out his pose and all this stuff without totally committing to, say, adding pencil lines to the painting or something like that. So we're certainly not, just going straight in with paint or ink or something. So I'm figuring out what this guy's going to look like, what our fun, adoring fan is going to do in the image, and I really want him to kind of wave at the viewer, to wave at you, the character, you, the protagonist of this story. He's saying, hey, come get in one of your vehicles. This will be fun. We'll go together. And so he's kind of very welcoming, and I wanted to kind of get that body language across, that he's a friend, a very annoying friend, but still, he's there to support you. And then I kind of shift the page around to see what is the most appropriate proportions. So if you have a set character for the sheet of, the sheet of transparency, say you drew him this tall, if you push him down, he is closer to you in space, right? He's closer in terms of the depth of the image. And so I wanted to make sure that he was set at the right place for the most appropriate height. And now I'm just taking a black water-soluble pencil and I'm moving the transparency back and forth so I can see where this position is, and just basically doing a transfer like that, like an animator would do. with the onion skin method of creating frame by frame animation. It's very similar to that. And there I have the character all figured out. It's very lightly drawn on, but once I get the brush out, it'll kind of blend that pigment and create a block in for that person. Now I wanted to go back and refine the background some. So I had kind of like just threw down some wet on wet watercolory shapes for the mountains. And I mixed up some opaque gouache in a light blue-gray to tell me that these mountains are far in the distance. And I'm kind of refining those and also adding some shadow to one side of the mountains. And that tells me where my light source is. And, well, I already knew where the light source is because the cast shadow underneath the vehicle and the character and all that stuff. So I'm keeping that consistent. It is light on the left and shadow on the right. I just keep refining that background until I'm happy where that is. Then I start getting in on the vehicle, and I'm mixing all my colors sort of in the same general palette. And it mimics the sort of design of the game. So, this is not a super bright, saturated, colorful game. It really has a lot of sort of color grading happening, and that no two colors are terribly far apart in terms of hue or saturation. So generally like warm and cool grays everywhere. The vehicle itself, the color it's sort of made of, is gray. It's different materials of gray, sort of carbon fibers and things like that. So the only color that I thought was very different was the window, like the glass, because it's reflecting the world around, and it could be a little bit warmer, it could be a little bit more brown like the ground itself. And so I kind of made it that color so that it was different. And all this is just adding detail and shadow and fleshing out the shapes that comprise the vehicle. The vehicle that I'm painting, this ground vehicle, it was called the Deimog, and it was an official mod by Bethesda. The default vehicle is some other sort of moon buggy sort of thing. This one looked more like a car, looked more like an off-road car, and I thought that was kind of cool, like fully enclosed with the windshield and the windows and stuff like that. And so I just like the look of this one better than the fully open moon buggy style of the default vehicle. Adding a lot of highlights for that wheel so that it shines. The wet on wet watercolor was a little too much back there, and the paper was not preserved, so I had to add highlights with the gouache. Then I start to add some really sharp shadows. Basically my darkest darks are going in here. And then details like the treads on the tires, more shadows, and just all the little details that tell you what the shape of everything is and what kind of textures are happening. Then I get into the ship itself, and I'm using slightly lighter versions of the same colors I mixed on the Deimog. And so that tells me that the ship is a little bit further in the background, just based on atmospheric perspective. Sometimes the colors I mix are a little bit lighter, but that's okay because you can kind of push them around and mix them with more wet paint that's a little bit darker and just kind of modulate your colors as you go. Mixing on the canvas, if you will. In the end, it all sort of blends together into a mostly uniform gray, but there is a subtle difference between different parts of the ship. Then you go in with your sharper shadows, and these darker darks are really not that dark. They're more midtones, but because that ship is in the distance, it reads as, oh, this is almost like a black. This is almost as dark as it gets, right? All the little windows and things are coming into place. I'm basically doing everything but the character. So I'm getting all the background done, and I can then focus on our friend, the adoring fan. So he will come to life soon. I changed the camera so it was a little bit more straight on from above, and so you might see a little more clarity, like a little more close to the painting here. But I'm finishing up the ship, and I'm going in now to fill out the character himself. And what I've done is he is not wearing the outfit from Starfield. He is kind of wearing a more Starfield styled version of his outfit from Oblivion, which was basically just a green little tunic, I guess you'd call it, with some trousers, I guess. But it was more of an olive green that he wore in Oblivion, so I changed it to that. And of course, I gave him the super pointy blonde hair that he had in Oblivion. So he's more Oblivion styled than he is Starfield styled. Yeah, they changed his visual design a whole lot for Starfield. Basically, it's just a normal looking guy with a faux hawk. He is not normal in my painting at all. Just looks like the happy little elf that we all know and love. Says, "Come on over, get in your little car and take me around and I'll protect you." And then I wanted to add a little bit more blue to the sky, so here I am doing that and dabbing around with a paper towel. And so there it is all together. Oh, then I actually go in with a pencil. So I've got these primary colored pencils. They are watercolor pencils. And I just decide to give a little blue and a little bit of red to certain elements. You know, I can tell you that this is the character and stuff like that. So kind of giving him a bit of a red outline so he stands out from the background even more. Usually my signature is the last step, but in this case I did a little bit more to kind of finish off the painting after the fact. Well, thank you all for watching up to this point. I hope you enjoyed the artwork, and if you liked Starfield, great. If you don't like Starfield, that's fine too. I hope that you like the art. I hope that the art inspires you to maybe play the game one day. That would be kind of cool. But anyway, it'd be a huge help if you like this video and subscribe to the channel so that I myself do not fall into oblivion. That would be very sad. So until the next one, this has been Pixels to Pigments on Moonlight Artcade. Oh, you're still here. Does that mean you've already liked the video, subscribed to the channel, rung the bell so you get notifications of when new videos are live, and you thought, how can I support you even more? Well, I'm glad you asked, because below in the description is a link to the artwork you saw in this video, and you can get it as a print and put it on your wall. How cool is that? Well, anyway, if you do that, I would really appreciate it. Thanks!